Hello, and welcome to this webinar about Antarctica. And today I'm joined by two gentlemen who are instrumental in delivering our Antarctica product. That is Jørn Henriksen and Aaron Lawton. And before I start introducing them, they can do so themselves, and they do so by sharing a few pictures. And Jørn is first, then it's Aaron, and then I'll do a little bit of my own introduction, more about my experience in Antarctica. So Jørn, take it away.
Thank you so much, Joost. Well, my name is, as said, Jørn Henriksen. I have one of the most exciting jobs in Viking, I believe myself at least, being the Director of Expedition Operations. We have two ships sailing, amongst other places, to Antarctica, which is the topic of the day. And you will see me in Antarctica every once in a while. I go on trips there every year, and sometimes I get to test new things during my voyages to Antarctica. And here you see me testing a new propulsion system in Orkney Harbor, Antarctica, with Viking.TV in the background. This is from last season. So I started out 3 decades ago as a Zodiac driver. That was my title in the team on board. And now, after so many years in the business, I still get to go to this absolutely wonderful place and drive a Zodiac if I'm really lucky. And last time I had that chance was last season on a wonderful day. That is what our team does on an everyday basis. But me, who have to work from an office position most of the time, it's a real treat. On the next picture, we see a whale. This was from another trip I had. I think it was actually the first season with the Viking.TV, the first season for Viking in Antarctica. And we did this first couple of trips, and we were there to check if everything worked. And sure, the whales worked, because we had this one baleen whale. It's a humpback whale that came all the way close to the ship, and it probably just followed their food source, the krill, and it filled its mouth with water that had obviously thousands of krills in it in order to filter out the krill and swallow the krill and spit the water out. And if you look really careful at that image, at the base of its mouth, above the pinkish pleats, you can actually see the small eye of the humpback whale. And it's staring right at me. At least that's what it feels like looking at the picture afterwards. And really, it's quite fascinating. That eye is probably 30 centimeters in diameter, but it looks really, really small on that huge animal. And if we are lucky, and we are so every once in a while, we get whales so close to the ship that you actually get eye contact. And that's on the rare occasion. But more often, you're going to meet the wonderful crew members that we have on board the ships. You're going to meet them every day, and here represented by Mark, one of our expedition leaders. He's the expedition leader on Viking Polaris, and he is a very smiley guy that is very easygoing. He's leading the expedition team of biologists, specialists, scientists, and everything, but he's also serving hot drinks to guests out on deck. And really one of these person that's in a key position on board, leading the team with a smile. And that's I think one of the biggest advantages of Viking, that we have people like Mark on our team, and they're working so well together. It's quite impressive to see how unbelievably well organized they are and how safe they perform their job in this rather challenging environment it can be on a windy day. But you will always find a smile when you're on board a Viking expedition ship. Yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Jorn. And you started with saying that you have what you think is the best job at Viking, and I think mine's actually better because I report to you, and so I don't have quite as many spreadsheets to fill out, but I get to deal more directly with the ship. I'm the head of expedition operations, and I'm also approaching my third decade in the Antarctic in an expedition cruising, you see a picture of me sitting here with a couple of kids, and just the caveat: you won't see kids on our ships in the Antarctic. But these are two of my three daughters, and I was fortunate. Almost a decade and a half ago to take them down to the Antarctic when I was leading a trip. And it was funny enough, and I thought you'd appreciate this story. We got ashore at a beautiful site, and you know, there are guidelines and rules that we have to follow, and one of them is that you can't touch the penguins and can't approach them. We have to stay 5 meters away from the wildlife. And my younger daughter in that picture, in the yellow life jacket, Madeline, she said, "Dad, can I touch the penguin?" "No, Madeline, you can't." Can I hug the penguin?" That doesn't classify as touching in her mind. "No, you can't hug the penguin." "Well, can I play with it?" "No, Madeline, you can't do that." "Dad, can I go back to the ship?" and I just chuckled as I thought about that, and I was like, "And no, you can't go back to the ship." And what a wonderful privilege to get ashore in Antarctica and experience it, and it's something we do. This is a penguin colony. I think this is Demoy Point, one of the sites we visit. Gentoo penguins in the background, and I've been very fortunate over the last close to 30 years to be down on the ice many more than 100 times, 100 voyages, and every experience is special and unique, and including a couple of seasons ago, I had this absolutely wonderful morning on Viking Octantis. I woke up and I was just happened to wake up early and look out my cabin window into this incredible scene of ice alongside the ship, and that morning, that low angle of sun across the horizon, illuminating the flows of ice, the clouds dramatic, and as you may not know, our cabins are quite uniquely designed in that the windows in our cabin, the full window, the top half of it drops down. We call it a Nordic balcony, and so that top of the window drops down and gives us a view out. You can you get the fresh air in. You can hear the sounds of the ice, the sounds of a whale if it's alongside the ship. But you also get absolutely sensational images. So I lowered the window and grabbed my phone and snapped a picture. And that's what you're looking at here of the ice, a big tabular iceberg in the background with the sea ice in the foreground. And that is just an experience you have that you wake up to in Antarctica, that when you turn around, you see it. You don't necessarily need to be along the coastline or in a bay to have these experiences. This was just out 10 miles offshore, as we were approaching slowly through the ice to get to our next landing site. And the landing sites are quite fantastic, and each one is dramatic and different. And this iceberg off of Paulette Island in the Weddell Sea was a beautifully sculpted iceberg. Every time you look at an iceberg or see an iceberg, you see a different sculpture, another one of nature's sculptures, and each one is unique. And this group of Adelie penguins perhaps were not so keen on what Mother Nature had sculpted and designed and painted for them, so they in turn did their own little paint job on this iceberg. It was grounded beside one of the larger Adelie penguin colonies in the Weddell Sea sea, and because it was grounded there, it was a frequent rest spot as the Adelies leave the nests, and one of them would go off and leave its partner on the egg, and one would go off and feed, and then head around the backside of this iceberg and jump up on the iceberg and then chat with the neighbors, and then eventually jump back in the water and race back to shore, panting and saying to the partner, "Sorry, I took so long. I had to go a long way to get fish." And meanwhile, they were on the side of this iceberg. But every experience, every day in Antarctica brings a unique experience, and we're excited to share some of those stories with you today. Over to you, Joost.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm the VP of product, but you can think of me, because we had a discussion recently about my role in things like these webinars, and you can think of me as an enthusiastic traveler. And this is the enthusiastic traveler with his son. We don't have these particular kayaks anymore, but at the time we experimented with these, and this is very early on. This was on the maiden voyage of Viking.TV, and the two of us are just having a blast being out there in the water. Being in a kayak lowers your point of view, and it makes you really very much immersed in your natural environment. And then the next image, is, those are penguins, of course. But what I love this image for is that it also in the background shows these dark gray and light gray rocks, and then all that orange stuff on them. Those are lichen. So Antarctica is not just a wide world. There's an awful lot of color. There's an awful lot to see there that is very, very surprising. And this was one of those moments where I looked up this rock face and I thought, wow, this is unlike anything I would have expected. And then the third image shows, I think that's a place called Hidden Bay. And this I liked. I picked this one to kind of convey to you that, of course, there are very few, very rare days where the weather is so inclement that you don't really want to get off the ship. But you don't need sunshine to have these absolutely amazing natural landscapes in Antarctica. This, of course, is under a cloud cover. And the funny thing is, this was the morning in Hidden Bay where this cloud cover was low. It was uniformly gray. And then in the afternoon, the skies opened up and we had clear blue skies, and it was a completely different experience. And then finally, we have an image that shows, I think, Jörn and myself proud as peacocks, because this was still on that very first, the maiden voyage of Viking.TV, and we had just tested out the SOB, that is short for, what is it again?
Special Operations Boat.
I couldn't think about it for a moment. The Special Operations Boat. And the Special Operations Boat is something, we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but it's the perfect vehicle for a small group of people. You're in it seats 12, correct?
That is correct. And we have two seats more, one for the driver and one for the guide. So it's a 14-person boat.
Most comfortable, most enjoyable, most sheltered ride you could possibly have in Antarctica. And so now we're done with the introductions. What we'll do next is I will take you through some general introductions about Viking, about its products in Antarctica. What these webinars are really for is for you to ask questions, and you can do so. You'll find on the right-hand side of the screen, usually, very rare occasions it might be on the left, but you'll find it. You can type in questions. We'll answer as many of these as we can. If we don't get to your question, someone can contact you after the webinar is over to give you, what Jörn or Aaron or myself, we think about this, so that you will get all of your questions answered. Every once in a while, you may find that we ask you a question. It's fun. You can play along a little bit. One way or another, the three of us are going to try really hard to allow for a lot of time for you to ask questions. That's always the biggest part of the fun. And then we will get started. Just to give a brief introduction into what we do, Viking. What do we think is special about the way we do Antarctic exploring. And the first thing is a slide that I like to call don't take our word for it. Condé Nast Travelers and Travel and Leisure's World's Best Awards in 2024 went to Viking for expedition ships. We do have every year we gather quite a few accolades about the way we do things, and we'll get to how we do these things and why we think this is kind of our formula for success. Here you have another slide that shows you how we did in these contests with Condé Nast and with Travel and Leisure. And especially in Travel and Leisure, you can see that we're quite far ahead of the competitors. Okay, so let's get to the way that Viking's expeditions are a little different from what you might experience with our esteemed competitors. The ship is probably a fairly important difference. Our ship is a tiny bit larger than your average expedition ship, but it is small enough to be able to fit into all the little nooks and crannies of the Antarctic Peninsula. That means you can go into places like Hidden Bay or Wilhelmina Bay. You can get close enough to Demoy Point to launch the Zodiacs and to set foot ashore. If you're interested in the experience as we have been describing it in the introduction, and as we will describe it in the course of the webinar, the one thing that you should never do, I think, don't take my word for it, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Don't book the large ships that sail by Antarctica, because the experience is fundamentally different from actually being able to set foot ashore, to go into these nooks and crannies, into these bays, into these inlets. It is absolutely no comparison to see. It's kind of like, okay, let's look at the Eiffel Tower from very, 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 very far away. That's the experience you would have, and that's just not the same. So the ship is built, we call it, we right size our ship. We make sure that it's large enough to have all the equipment that we need. We just showed you the special operations boat. Those are fairly large, and we have on the ship a hangar that is home to the Zodiacs, to kayaks, to submarines. You need quite a bit of space for all of this equipment, and we have this, and this is why the ship is the way it's been designed. A plus also of the size of the ship, and you may have heard of this. If you're interested in booking a voyage to Antarctica, you will have heard of the terrible Drake Passage. That is one of the windiest places in the world. The great thing about a somewhat longer ship is that the ride that you would have on a smaller tub that goes from left to right and from front to back, is that doesn't happen nearly as much on a somewhat longer, slender ship that kind of cuts through the waves. Our voyages, our expedition voyages, are also different from what we do on ocean and on river cruises. And that's really simple. You go to remote places. You tend to therefore visit, the focus tends to be much more on wildlife and on places where very few people have ever visited. And then another large differentiator, and we'll get to it a little bit more further on into the presentation, is we conduct science on the ship. We work with a number of partners to basically do research. And for researchers, especially in Antarctica, but also in other remote places, researchers tend to have a lot of questions and never enough money to answer all of these questions. So essentially, it's not uncommon for expedition ships to allow scientists, if you will, to hitch a ride. The only difference between most other expedition cruise lines and Viking is that you don't just hitch a ride with us. We also give you a full-size wet and dry lab where you can conduct your work. And all that we ask of these visiting science and our resident scientists is that our guests are allowed to look over people's shoulder and understand what the science is all about. And that is actually one of our key differentiators. It's also one of the things that we get most of the kudos from. Even if you don't quite understand all the tiny little details, there's something quite magnificent and something quite behind the scenes to see our onboard scientists go about their business. The inclusive value is something that you will find throughout, whether you go on a river cruise or an ocean cruise or on an expedition voyage. The three that I'd like to point out here is the use of kayaks, zodiacs, and special operations boats are included. You need to take your turns, obviously, but everyone gets their turn. And if the weather is great and everyone's lucky, then you'll have more than one turn. In places where you absolutely need them, and those are the polar itineraries, we give you a jacket. It's an expedition jacket with, a little Viking logo. They're made for this environment. They're actually two-piece, and they keep you warm. And all the expedition gear that you need to set foot ashore. Those are usually walking poles. You can have some snowshoes. We guide you along, obviously, and all of essentially every time that you set foot ashore, that's quite an operation. Those are not things that are, those are not optional excursions or anything like that. It's an integral and included part of your entire experience. Here are some images of the expedition team, and Jørn already alluded to these folks, and you can read this slide. It's not that there's a lot of different roles on the ship. I think the important part is that you have everything covered. You have scientists who are into birds, you have geologists, you have marine biologists, you even often have an historian on board, so that your experience becomes very well-rounded from an enrichment perspective. And then you have all these folks that are really good at making sure that you're kept safe. That you find that you have, enough time in places, and that the expedition leadership team is also closely working with the captain. And this is quite important. We will present itineraries to you. Within these itineraries, where you actually land varies and depends a lot on weather, depends on what animal sightings there have been recently. So that changes. And that's the job of the expedition leader and his team, to figure out your detailed itinerary. Onboard enrichment, I spoke about a little bit. I will start to move up a little bit quicker. This is Expedition Central. It's a space dedicated to learning, a space dedicated to asking questions. You can see on the left-hand side this big screen. It's connected to this table in the middle of this room, and that is actually a giant computer screen where we can track. Actually, our scientists use this a lot to visualize their data, where we can track certain measurements that the scientists make as we progress, in this case, along the Antarctic Peninsula. This is also in Expedition Central, and this is a fun part. It's a little hard to see in this particular image, but on the wall in the background there, you can see felt models of of about 12 birds, 12 to 15 birds that you can see in Antarctica. And then this is the lab. Again, this is where the scientists are working, but they will gladly interrupt what it is that they're doing to explain to you what they're all up to. And that's an enormous part of people's experience, even if it's just for 10 minutes, to understand that what your voyage is all about is also contributing to science, is a great thing. And these are some of our scientific partners. Probably the most important ones are the University of Cambridge. The Scott Polar Research Institute is part of the University of Cambridge. The Norwegian Institute for Water Research. We do a lot of constant monitoring, measuring, beaming data back to the partners that we work with. Scripps Oceanography Institute gets all of our data, the University of San Diego, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. A big part of what we do is basically gathering data and sharing this with these institutions. And this gives you an idea of the kind of things that we do. I'll just pick one of them. and that's the one in the middle on the top, the Beta Remote Underwater Video System. It's a very simple thing. We essentially drop this bracket into the water. These boxes that you see have some things that the fish will find very tasty and smelly. So it attracts whatever lives underwater, and it films these fish and the rest of the underwater wildlife to essentially create an index, if you will, or to create an inventory. And we can do this in any place in the world. And we actually do so. This is a project where we work together with the University of Western Australia. And there's other projects, as you can see on this slide, that we also, again, we generally tend to work with scientific partners to make sure that whatever it is that we do finds resonance in the scientific community. Outfitted for adventure, I think that's quite clear. We make sure that you have everything that you need to go ashore, from the boots to the coats to the what do you call it, the life jackets. This was something that Jørn and Aaron worked on very closely. You can listen to these two gentlemen talk about the particular qualitative aspects of the boots that we use on the ship, and it gets very intricate and very hard to understand very, very quickly. But that's what we have our experts for. This gives you a sense of the equipment on board: the kayaks, the Zodiacs, the two six-seater submarines. And you may have heard this. If you've seen any kind of YouTube videos on Viking when we first launched these ships, the submarines, of course, are yellow, and they all have names. They're called John, Paul, George, and Ringo. And then we have the two 12-seat special operations boats, and I talked about those earlier. This is the hangar where all of the equipment is kept. And this space in and by itself, we'd like to call it a technical space with these big gantry cranes and things. One of the highlights our guests tell us is to get a peek into this space and to just see all the equipment and get explained what it all is. And then in the middle, you can see how we bring the special operations boat in and out of the ship. It's this, this reverse runway, if you will. This is one of the outdoor spaces. And this is a big thing on all of our ships. We like to have spaces where you can spend time al fresco, if you want to call it that, or indoors. The public spaces are done with an awful lot of consideration, an awful lot of thought, to make sure that you basically just make the best of the space that you have. A ship is always limited in size. And so you don't want to waste any space, and you don't want to have anything on a ship that you don't really need. And I do believe that over a good, now almost 25 years of ship design, we've become quite adept at that. These are some of the stateroom features that are quite unique to Viking. We have a drying closet. You see that in the back on the bottom right-hand side. You come back with all your equipment. It's a little wet because outside there's always a little bit of wetness, even if it doesn't necessarily rain. You put them in the closet, and the closet dries it for you. And this now you can see in the deluxe Nordic balcony. You can see that Nordic balcony that Aaron spoke about. The top window comes down, and you have a perfect little shelf that you can put your elbows on to look outside, use binoculars. Each stateroom has binoculars to see what's going on. And it's really a perfect viewpoint as you sail along. I've used it a lot of times, just, as you're doing something in your room, all of a sudden something stirs on the outside. You can lower your window and you can see what it is. And here I just flip you through some of the rooms. This is a little larger, a junior suite, and this is the Explorer suite, which is obviously yet larger. We will now show you a little video that does a much better job than I just did in so many words, to show you what the ship looks like in moving images. And right after that, Jörn and I will start to take the first round of questions.
Viking is ready to explore the polar regions and the Great Lakes in comfort. Our right-sized polar-class vessels, Viking Octantis and Viking Polaris, are designed for expedition voyages. Small enough to navigate remote polar regions, yet large enough to provide superior handling and stability, delivering the extraordinary expedition experience you should expect from Viking. These are the thinking person's expeditions. Profound voyages of discovery, created for curious travellers. On board, the Explorer's Lounge is an ideal place to sample aquavit, a craft beer, or perhaps Norwegian specialties from Mumsens, a casual gourmet deli named for my grandmother, the Hagen family matriarch, that's also well known for its signature waffles. At the aft is the Aquavit Bar and Terrace, complete with an invigorating indoor to outdoor pool, the Tepidarium, flanked by a Caldarium pool on one side and Frigidarium on the other. Or head for the Finse Terrace, its comfortable couches and lava rock fire pits, located next door to the expansive Aula Theatre. This stunning panoramic auditorium, inspired by the University of Oslo's famed ceremonial hall, features a retractable 4K laser-projected screen that exposes spectacular 270-degree views from floor to ceiling windows. Home to lectures, daily briefings, science presentations, and films, it's the world's most advanced venue for learning at sea. Exploration beyond our Viking expedition ships is designed to be effortless. To accomplish this key design goal, Viking created the hangar, an industry first. The enclosed marina permits guests to embark watercraft sheltered from the inclement weather. Also overlooking the hangar is the Science Lab, a wet and dry laboratory developed in partnership with the University of Cambridge and Aquaplan Neva, which allows our scientists to conduct meaningful research and encourages guests' interaction. Additional knowledge centres are found throughout both ships, all to provide abundant opportunities for our guests to learn and discover as we explore the far corners of the globe. In the spa, immerse yourself in healthy Scandinavian traditions. From the sauna and snow grotto to a relaxing massage. Or enjoy a Nordic bathing ritual, an invigorating experience, moving from the cold of our snow grotto to a bade stump, the traditional Norwegian wood-sided hot tub. Dining brings many of the choices that Viking is known for, including Manfredi's for Italian cuisine and a private dining option. The restaurant, our elegant dining venue, the World Café for international flavours in casually elegant surroundings, the Aquavit Bar, and Mumsens, as well as 24-hour room service options. In our staterooms, sweeping views are yours from our Nordic balcony. A private sunroom with floor-to-ceiling, distortion-free glass that lowers to create a sheltered alfresco viewing platform. Our expedition vessels have a wide range of staterooms from which to choose, including spacious, elegant explorer suites, as well as the expansive owner's suite, an inviting home away from home, with the most exclusive accommodations and amenities on board. Viking expeditions reveal a breathtaking view of the planet in its purest state. We look forward to welcoming you on board.
Okay, and then Lauren, are you there? Because Lauren, it's time for questions.
Yes, hello, thank you. Now we're receiving a lot of great questions and comments from our guests tuning in today to the presentation. We'll start with Margaret, who would like to know what sort of person would best be suited to travel on an expedition? Are these voyages good for guests who are maybe more mature in age?
Yeah, I'll let the other gentleman chime in as well. But what I will say is that it's the one. I would never recommend going on a river voyage if you wouldn't be able to get off the ship and if you wouldn't be able to walk around the cities, because I think that's an integral part. The expedition voyages, or the Antarctic voyages in particular, are the only voyages where I would say, even if you never make it off the ship, you'll still have an absolutely splendid time, because there's so much that you can see just from the deck of the ship, stuff that you would never imagine you would see. So it's spectacular whether you are mobile or whether you're not so mobile. The one thing, and I'm sure that Jörn and Aaron will want to specifically address this, is you need to know what you can and cannot do. If you get on shore and you're not stable on your own 2 feet, you make it a little bit too difficult for yourself. But I would say, even if you're a little mobility impaired, have at it. Jörn, what do you think?
Completely agree. We have a ship that strikes a balance between delivering experiences of the ship in kayaks, zodiacs, subs, special operations boats. It's a varying degree of physical that you need to be in order to take advantage of those different things, where the special operations boat is for everyone, essentially. If you can walk the stairs, you can also walk into a special operations boat. But you're absolutely right. The ship itself, if you're not going off the ship in Antarctica, you still have an absolutely wonderful experience. With reference to that slide Aaron had from the balcony, from the Nordic balcony in the cabin, you just roll it down, and you're virtually outside and very close to the Antarctic environment. So I often say that if you can make it down to Ushuaia with changing airports, sitting in the same seat on the plane for 10 hours or whatever it is from where you live, that part of the expedition is often the more strenuous than being on the expedition ship.
And you reminded me just earlier, Viking is the only operator that has these special operations boats. And I remember just sitting on them and having better shock absorption than my own car. It never gets bumpy. It never gets bumpy.
No, it's a very sturdy hull. It's a thick aluminum ice strengthened hull. So it sits very solidly in the water, and it's individual hydraulic suspension on each and every seat in the boat. So when we decided to have these boats, it was a function of reverse engineering. We asked ourselves, what do we think the guests want out of a boat ride in Antarctica? And part of Viking's promise is comfort. And we designed almost the whole back part of the ship around, amongst all the things, the special operations boat.
Aaron, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think you both captured it. It's an experience. Two of the three images I shared at the start were taken from the ship. Of the thousands of images that I have on my phone and computers of Antarctica, I chose images from the ship because they're some just iconic views that you can experience. So, know your limits. Do your very best. If you're concerned sort of physically, talking with your medical provider at home, there's a medical form for going to the Antarctic that you fill out. And then just knowing those limits. And then when you're on board the ship, you can always talk with the expedition leader or the guest services manager, one of the team on board, just to make sure you understand, hey, here are my limitations. Can you just let me know which activities would be better for me, or where I should spend my time? Remember that the Antarctic experience is part of it is outside. It's experiencing outside on deck. It's in these expedition activities, these craft that we go out on. But it's also about we have a puzzle table on the ship. Have you ever worked on a jigsaw puzzle while looking at penguins or icebergs? Well, you can do that on one of our ships, and then you can grab a coffee, and then you can go to a lecture and learn something about the Antarctic and answer and figure out what type of penguins those just were. So it's quite an experience.
All right, Lauren. I think that was a little bit more than you were bargaining for, but go ahead. Next question.
You really set the picture for everyone. Great, thank you. Sean, Stephen, and Elizabeth are inquiring if the science labs are available to all passengers, and can they participate in the research projects you highlighted earlier?
The answer to that is yes. Everyone is welcome to the lab, and depending on what projects we're working on, we encourage participation. Absolutely. There are certain things that are just too delicate, or you work with chemicals that you don't want everyone to touch. But overall, an enormous part of this is let's all get into this. Let's all get our hands dirty, and let's do science, because a lot of it, like I mentioned earlier, it's collecting, it's gathering data. And we encourage you to sign up for a number of apps that you can use to help you collect data. And this is stuff that goes to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It goes to NASA. It goes to other scientific institutions we work with. It's sometimes a lot easier than you think to become a scientist.
Great, thank you. I have Robert and Daniel who are asking, on expeditions with some of the excursions changing based on the weather, would they sign up for excursions like they would for oceans or river cruises, or are they booked on board?
You sign up for them, but then we do ask that you're a lot more flexible in your expectations than on a regular scheduled voyage, like an ocean voyage or a river voyage. Essentially, let's say you really want to do a kayak, really want to do a kayak excursion. Well, then you sign up, and we have a slot for you at that point in the voyage where we haven't actually started the journey. But it's quite possible that you will get your kayak turn a day earlier or 2 days later. Aaron, am I saying anything wrong?
No, that's exactly it. And we have a communication system on board the ship that through your cabin TVs, through the Viking Voyager app, where once you get on board the ship, if there's been adjustments to the day-to-day itinerary around ice or weather, those timings will be adjusted in that app, the Viking Voyager app, which you download on your phone before you come to the ship, or you'll see it on your TV under your calendar. And then we just ask for that flexibility. It's very hard to plan the exact weather for tomorrow, let alone months in advance, and especially at the other end of the world. So,
Great, thank you. Marcia is asking, what expedition gear does Viking provide?
Jörn, that's one for you, because you handpicked all of it.
Yes. We provide a jacket, a wind waterproof jacket. It's a 2-piece, so it has an insulating puffer jacket underneath. That is, it's detachable, so you can use either of those pieces in that jacket system individually. We will give you boots. It's neoprene boots, specially designed for Viking, that are really warm, and they have really good traction on the surfaces that we expect to hit in Antarctica. And we will also provide you with a pair of wind waterproof pants. So that's the layering system that we will provide you with. The jackets, they are a take-home item for you, so that you get to keep. In addition, when you come on shore, we have trekking poles and that you can just pick up when you come ashore if you like them, or if you don't, it doesn't matter. You just pick them up when you land. Aaron, did I forget anything then?
I would just add you sourced a really fantastic set of binoculars that guests can find in every cabin.
Yeah.
Every stateroom has binoculars of a high quality that we encourage everybody to use as much as possible. And you often find bird guides around in the library and wildlife guides to identify. So that's a good addition, Aaron.
Great, thank you. I have Alice, who says she has sailed on Viking oceans on several occasions and is curious to know how Viking expedition ships will differ. Can you touch a bit more on that?
Sure. They're a little smaller. So our ocean vessels hold 930 or 998 guests, and the expedition ships hold 378. So there are fewer guests. The ship is almost the same size. It's a little lower. It's a little smaller, but not by an awful lot, because we have the hangar and we have Expedition Central. So we have a lot of additional public spaces. We have Manfredi's restaurant. We have the restaurant. We have the World Cafe. The World Cafe is probably where most people do most of their breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and that has an awful lot to do with you're constantly, when you really get into it and when the weather's nice, you will want to have a quick bite to eat and then go outside again, or you will want to have a quick bite to eat and then do your kayaking. So the World Cafe sees a lot of traffic. We have Momsen's on the ship, and other than that, the staterooms, you've seen them in some of these images. They're a little different, but they come with the same kind of comfort that we have on the ocean and on the river vessels. You walk onto an expedition ship, and it totally feels like it's part of the Viking family of ships. Yeah, it feels like, to me, it feels like I walk onto these ships and it's like, oh yeah, that I belong here. This is our home.
All right, thank you. We have time for about one more question before we segue into our itinerary. We have Justine, who is wondering what kind of evening entertainment options are available on board.
Evening entertainment. So we do an awful lot of, I would call it enrichment, where we might show. We have the aula, and the aula is a spectacular room that shows on a very large screen. We do presentations there. We also have some films that we show there. We have a custom-made film of Roald Amundsen's discovery or his trek to the South Pole. We have musicians. We do present on the stage in the aula. We sometimes present little events. So it's the focus is very much on enrichment, but we do have quite a bit of entertainment as well. Jörn or Aaron, what do you want to add?
I could jump in and just say that we do have lectures in the evenings from time to time, but also our guides, from the sort of the wealth of the expedition team. There are stories that we call them expedition diaries, and so you can join one of our guides down in the hide and for a story, and generally they're true, but sometimes the experiences they've had do come across as tall tales, because our guides come from a broad array of backgrounds and experiences. So that storytelling is very much in the line of expeditions in Antarctic, sort of the days of past in the Antarctic and on the wardrooms of ships, and so we carry that tradition on.
All right, so then we shall launch into the itinerary part. And the Antarctic Explorer, 13 days, 2 countries. I will not talk you through it the way I would normally do this from day 1 to day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, because it does work a little bit differently. It's easier to take apart the experience and not, I keep it in chronological sequence, but not necessarily discuss each day individually. So you fly into Buenos Aires. There we have a hotel where you first meet our local ground staff, the people that will then prepare you for the next day, where you fly to Ushuaia at the very southern tip of Argentina, and that's where you board the ship. That is a charter flight that takes off from Buenos Aires airport. That's usually the city airport that's in the middle of the city that brings you to Ushuaia, and that's where you board the vessel. And then you set sail the night that you board the vessel. And the first day is spent in, the first few hours are spent in the Beagle Channel. There still looks very much like, it's a very wide body of water between a few islands. And you still feel like you're kind of in southern South America. The hills are still green, and there's quite a bit of wildlife there already. But then you start sailing through the Drake Passage, and that's that day 3. Now you're in the open seas. And you could imagine that a sea day, if you've ever had one on an ocean vessel, those tend to be where you read books and, where you maybe take a little nap and you lounge a little bit longer after lunch, because that's what a sea day is for. Crossing the Drake Passage can actually be quite exciting, because that's where the wildlife experience really already starts. There's lots of birds, passing birds there. You might have a few dolphins accompany the ship for a little while. So you keep your eyes peeled from the moment on you get out of Ushuaia, basically. And then days 4 through 10, you explore Antarctica. You're actually on the Antarctic Peninsula, and maybe I can show you what it all looks like on a map. So the Antarctic Peninsula it's a relatively small little area. When you look at your screen here, or when you look at my screen here, you can see the Gerlache Strait. That's kind of right in the middle of the slide, a little bit towards the bottom. That area to the right of it, that is kind of where we move around on the peninsula. And as Jørn and Aaron know much better than I do, we will pick from how many landing sites do we have, Jørn and Aaron, that we visit on the Antarctic Peninsula?
Generally, we're visiting about 7 unique landing sites over the course, or unique excursion sites over the course of a voyage. We picked those 7 sites out of a pool of 120, 130 landing sites that are frequently used across the region. Each site having various characteristics, and we have our favorite few sites that we really do try to schedule.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's yeah. Go ahead, Jørn.
Can I add one thing? It's a few years ago now, but when we designed this itinerary, which we've kept ever since the first voyage, the standard 7 days in Antarctica on the Antarctic Peninsula, there were discussions whether we were going to cut it to 6, 5 days, and so on. But one of the main arguments for retaining 7 days is that you have varying weather, and with a rather more than average number of days on the Antarctic Peninsula, we are drastically increasing the chances of success, because it's extremely rare that you have across the whole peninsula 7 days of weather too bad to go into the small boats, for example. So So that was a very important consideration to have enough days on the Antarctic Peninsula.
Maximizing opportunity, yes.
Yep.
Okay, and then after day 10, you make your way back virtually along the same lines back into Ushuaia, and that's where the voyage ends. And then we'll quickly flip through a few images. This is Buenos Aires here, the capital of Argentina. And usually people do have a little bit of time after they arrive to do some exploration on their own. The hotel is chosen in a way that maximizes the opportunity to just walk into town. And it's actually quite a walkable city. You can't get to all the highlights on foot, but you can usually have a nice little stroll depending on, or virtually independent of what hotel we've picked for you, because most of them are in locations that you can really enjoy the immediate surroundings. Then this is what Ushuaia looks like. And this, I love this image because in shoulder season, and virtually, so that's at the beginning and at the end of the Antarctic summer, which is our winter. The light, the evenings just last forever. So this is the kind of light that you will see for hours on end in this part of the world. And then sailing through the Drake Passage, as I mentioned, you will start to see your first wildlife. This is a beautiful image that we took. I remember, Jörn and Aaron, you must remember this too, when we took this.
Very much,
to have
yes.
all of our vehicles, all of our water vehicles in front of the main vessel. That was great fun to do. Then we're in Antarctica, and of course, the one thing that you can kind of guarantee, you can guarantee specific marine mammals, but when it comes to penguins, they're everywhere, and you will certainly see at least 2 out of 3, but usually 3 out of 3 Antarctic penguins. These are Adelie penguins, and later on you'll see some gentoos, and you'll see some chin straps. Here's a good example of what it looks like to go kayaking among the icebergs. And then here we have a little video that shows you how the hangar works. Okay, and this shows you what it looks like when you go ashore with the Zodiacs. You make your way through these icebergs, and then in the foreground, in this case, these are gentoo penguins. And this is one of the fun things that we also do, the weather balloon launches. This is our science team, those 4 folks in the yellow jackets. We work with the National Weather Service, the American National Weather Service, and so we have 2 vessels, and both of these vessels are registered. They're the only civilian vessels that launch weather balloons. All the rest of these around the world, these weather balloons are launched, but every other vessel is a U.S. Navy vessel. This next slide gives you an idea of the kind of wildlife that you will encounter. And all of these are you might not see a breaching humpback whale, but you're going to see humpback whales. I would be hesitant to guarantee anything, but this is quite common. All of these animals are quite common sightings. The next slide gives you an idea of what it's like to set foot ashore. We cut these steps into the snow early in the season. Later on in the season, it may be that you have a little bit of rocks on the shore when the ice has melted back a little bit. This is a view from a kayak. And these are slides that give you just an impression of what the experience is going to be like. again, the lighting is throughout much of the day, in the evening hours and in the early morning hours. It's just absolutely spectacular. It tends to be one of those voyages where you get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and decide that you're just going to go out for a walk, because that is what the landscape invites you to do. There's another image, in this case, of the Octantis, and this is sailing back to Cape Horn. Now, this is what it looks like, the tip of South America, when you get back towards Ushuaia. And I'm going to then fast forward a little bit. This is another beautiful image of Ushuaia and the sea lions, and again, penguins in the background. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because Lauren has pointed out that we're a little low on time, and we do really want to ask or answer as many questions as we can. I will really flip through, and I'm just going to stick with the map here for a moment. Dwell a little bit on the voyage that we call Into the Antarctic Circle. And what this simply is it's a little bit of a longer voyage that takes you across the Antarctic Circle. The easiest way to think about this, and of course this is kind of a rite of passage, if you will, we will get you a certificate to take home with you to kind of, it's an imaginary line, but to many people it's also quite an emotional line to go this far. Many people cross the Arctic Circle when they do polar voyages, or even just in the north of Norway. Going across the Antarctic Circle is a lot more rare, and this is a voyage that affords that opportunity. And then the next slide shows you some of these very, very iconic king penguins that you find on South Georgia. And South Georgia is a group of islands that sits off the coast, quite far off the coast of South America. And we have a voyage that combines Antarctica, the Falkland Islands, and South Georgia. And essentially what that is it's a little bit of a longer voyage, and it combines wildlife that you will not necessarily see in Antarctica, but that you do see in South Georgia and on the Falklands. It combines that with what you see on the Antarctic Peninsula. So if you're a penguin counter, as I would call it, this is what you would want to do. I have to forewarn you, the South Georgia voyages that we have are close or completely sold out. So you would have to wait probably until 2027 at this stage. And this map shows you what that voyage looks like. And then we have Arctic region voyages, expedition itineraries. We will probably have another webinar about these at some point in the not too distant future. Into the Northwest Passage, which starts and ends in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. The Canadian and Greenland Explorer, which starts in Toronto, in if you will, in civilization, and then it takes you all the way into the Canadian and Greenlandish Arctic. And Canada and the Northwest Passage, which is a combo of the two. Finally, we have, if you really are now completely enticed to join us on a longer voyage, you can spend 81 days on our expedition vessels to travel all the way from the capital of Greenland to Ushuaia, and that will include going into the Shetlands, South Georgia, and the Antarctic Peninsula for a wildlife and iceberg extravaganza. Okay, that will then I have to the one thing I still have to add then are the extensions to these voyages. We have those in Buenos Aires and the Paraná Delta. That is more of a jungle experience, strangely. You wouldn't expect that necessarily from an Antarctic voyage. But of course, in South America, when you get all the way to Buenos Aires, you can think of these extensions as, well, I might as well. And this goes for the Paraná Delta, where you travel into a warren of waterways and islands and wetlands, and you see all kinds of bird life. Iguazu Falls, doesn't really need much of an introduction. And then you can also go to Patagonia in southern Chile, or to Peru, where you can see Machu Picchu. These are just add-ons. And again, we do this because we know that flying is not great fun usually. And so what we would like you to do is make the most, if you will, out of your air dollars. While you're there, you might as well go to Peru. You might as well go to Patagonia or one of the other destinations. And now we go back to your questions. Lauren, go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Joost. You touched on the Drake Passage a little bit with as far as wildlife, that they'll see lots of wildlife. But Ed, Suzanne, Ruth, and many others would like to know, what are the sea conditions like when crossing the Drake Passage?
So I will first give a quick little answer, but then we'll leave it to the experts. I've done the Drake Passage 4 times, and it was, as far as rocking the boat, it was very underwhelming. It was not bad at all. It was really not bad. I know that there are terror stories about it, and I did not experience that whatsoever. I remember 1 out of the 4 was a little on the rocky side, but that was just a little bit of rolling. It wasn't anything that had a lot of people very sick. Aaron, Jørn?
I can say so. The ship is extremely seaworthy. And I've sailed across the Drake's Passage on a Viking expedition ship with people that have sailed on other ships. And I have, included myself, sailed on a bunch of other ships across the Drake's Passage. And the Viking expedition ships are above and beyond and far much better than anything else I've ever experienced. As we speak, Viking Polaris is about to cross the 60th parallel. That's when you, per definition, are in Antarctica. And it's the first time this season, and they have 6 meters of waves right now, and that's a gentle crossing. 6 meters of waves in a smaller, shorter, less seaworthy ship would mean seasickness pills and all kinds of lying down in your bed, not walking around. On our ship, you can walk around and feel comparatively comfortable, because the length of the ship is 205 meters, 600 feet, and that really, really helps a lot with seaworthiness. So very stable.
All right, thank you. Robert and Anna are asking if there will be other expedition ships in the same areas as Viking.
Yeah, there are other ships down on the peninsula, and so throughout the course of a voyage, we might see other ships on a day-by-day basis. But we do follow what we call a wilderness etiquette between ships, and so at our landing site, it would just be us. We wouldn't share a landing site with another vessel. So we do follow a scheduling system. We book our landing sites, and while we have that site booked, we have the exclusive use of it. But going from site to site, you may see other ships.
You get to wave at them in the very, very, very far distance. That's how I experienced it.
Thank you. Now, you touched a little bit on the wildlife that guests will have a chance to see in Antarctica. Will they be able to see wildlife easily from the ship?
Yes. I remember when Jørn and I, we showed the picture where Jørn and I were traveling together. And I remember him, I was sitting in the World Cafe having coffee, and Jørn comes running in and he's like, "There's a minke whale." And we all walked out. And this was a whale that was swimming alongside the ship for at least 6 or 7 minutes. And you had a lot of people who were lined up just looking at this. And this whale was really curious, and it was, kind of splattering around and about. I also remember that same voyage, we were having dinner in Manfredi's, and my wife all of a sudden jumped up. She was with me and was like, "Orcas, there are orcas." And everyone in the restaurant, goes towards the windows to see the orcas. So you are in nature. It's everywhere. It's unavoidable.
Sounds amazing. Thank you.
It is.
I have Roy, Jeffrey, and Judy. They're asking if you can provide guidelines on how best to dress for such an adventure, or what should they pack?
That's a great question. The gear, of course, that we provide, that insulating layer, the outer layer of windproof, waterproof pants, that windproof, waterproof jacket that you get to take home. Bringing a nice, good warm pair of gloves is we highly recommend. Something that's waterproof or water resistant, and that drying cabinet in your cabin in your stateroom will has sort of warm glove dryers and boot dryers. So between excursions, you can put your gloves and your hat in there to dry. Having an insulating thermal layer, we always recommend a base layer of merino wool, which is a great base layer to start building up, and then it's a layering principle. So bring a few extra layers with you, and then each day. What we really do recommend is that you go out on the deck of the ship before an excursion and walk around outside, dressed as you think you need to be for the excursion, and then if you're cold, you can add a layer on. If you're overheating, then you can think about adjusting layers in that regard. Of course, there's the laundry service on the ship, but also the laundromat where you can do your own laundry. So you don't need to be sort of excessive in packing a lot of extra gear with you. Layers. Thermal base layer, and then on board the ship, like any other Viking ship you're on, bringing something to wear to Manfredi's or the restaurant in the evening is always nice. Or if you want to be up in the living room listening to the classical duo.
Sunglasses.
Oh, sunglasses! Very good point. Yes.
Thank you, Jorn. Now, you briefly touched on the Arctic region. How does Antarctica differ from the Arctic?
Oh, that's an Aaron question, I think, right? Or Jorn. Both of you guys have spent time in both extremes. So go right ahead.
Jorn, you live north of the Arctic Circle for most of your life, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. There are some differences. We just talked about wildlife and the proximity and the intimacy of wildlife that you experience on an Antarctic voyage. There is a lot of wildlife in the Arctic as well, but the Arctic, you don't get that close to the wildlife. It's not as dense as in Antarctica. That's one of the things I experienced when I traveled to the Arctic this year with Viking Atlantis, with many guests that had been traveling to Antarctica before, and some were a little bit disappointed that they didn't have the same wildlife experience in the Arctic as in Antarctica. It's just, it's on a longer distance, and it's more rare to see the wildlife. It's not as in your face as in Antarctica, but
I think though in polar regions and the Arctic, you have a lot more culture, right? You meet indigenous people both in Greenland and in the Canadian Arctic. I think it's I think they're just very different experiences. The comparison is obvious, but it's like I do think that each has their own strengths, right? And I think when you travel in the Arctic, meeting people there who make a living in this really hostile environment, that to me has always been something quite, very, very impressive. Okay, Lauren?
All right. Thank you. Now, we are a little over on time, but we wanted to ask one more question from Rayanne, who asks or states that she's a fan of Viking expedition cruises, and she's been to Antarctica on a couple of times with Viking. As she considers another future trip, what month or season is each of your favorite and why?
Oh, brother. Who wants to go first?
Very quickly, because I sailed with Rayanne to the Arctic this summer, and my favorite season is when I get to sail on the same trip as she goes on.
I feel like that was a cop-out, Jorn. My favorite time of the season, I have been to the Antarctic in October. I've been to the Antarctic in April. And so over the entire length of an operating season in Antarctica. And for me, there's something magical about being there early in the season in November. And the mountains, of course, are covered in snow. The landing sites are covered in snow, and it's pristine. It just over the course of the season, the snow starts to melt. The penguins sort of, well, you saw that picture of that iceberg near the start of the show. The penguins dirty up the place a little bit, and I just love the pristine nature, the pristine snow early in the season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say though, I remember being there a little later than we were there in January, and the great thing I thought there was that you have everywhere you go in those penguin colonies, you have fluffy little penguins. The young are all out, and to me that was phenomenal to just see. Everywhere you see the parents, and then you see these little gray fuzz balls, peek out from underneath their parents.
Yeah, very much so.
I think it all has its own charm. All right, Lauren, was that the last question?
Yes, and then thank you all so much, Jorn, Aaron, and Joost, for taking the time to answer our viewers' questions. And we do apologize for running a bit long, but we do hope that you've taken some valuable information from our session today. We've received so many more questions than we can answer. So for those guests who still have questions that we were unable to get to, we will soon be in touch with answers to those questions. And if you are a travel advisor, please reach out to your local DVD with your question. This webinar link will be shared to rewatch later today, as well as in the future on Viking.TV. But thank you all again so much.
And Lauren, if I may just add one final thing, if you haven't had enough of the three of us, we're back 1 week from now. Same time, slightly different places. I'm in the Azores tonight, and I will be back in Basel next week, but we will be talking about the Great Lakes. So we hope to see you there.